You know, I'm just thrilled to have you here because it's not often that we get to have an opportunity to see different deaf and deafblind professional artists, to sit face to face and learn about your background, how you got to where you are, and how we can support artists like you. So I look forward to learning more about you. So now, what was your first taste of creativity?
My first acting experience was when I was really little. My family had one of those old chests, and I have a little brother, so I would always grab him and we would get dressed up and get up and do a performance and call my mom in to come and watch. That was when it all started, when I was maybe 3 or 4 or 5. Plus Halloween. I loved Halloween. It was one of my favorite holidays when I was younger. I would always dress up as something.
How did you get into theater?
Missoula Children's Theater would travel around, and they came to our area for a week. I think it was a summer program, so we'd spend the week rehearsing, and then by Saturday we would have an actual performance. So that was really terrific. And then after that, I joined the YSP program. That's the Young Scholars program at Gallaudet. It's a month-long program, and I was involved in that when I was maybe 14. I met so many people in that program who are still involved in the arts. And it was a month-long intensive for theater and dance, and it was just the best. It was a really good experience. And after that, I was involved in theater throughout high school.
And what was your first acting role?
Well, my first sort of impressive role was in high school in our town. hmm Um, it was a big role. It was a lot of responsibility, but it was so much fun. But oh, I forgot. I actually did do a play before that. My freshman year in high school, we did The Night Thoreau Spent in Jail. So that was my first play. And then sophomore year was Our Town.
Very cool. I'm sure that was a wonderful experience for you working with others on a stage production. How did you get around stage fright?
Mm, well, that's a good question. Really is a good question. Um, stage fright is a reality. It is scary, but it can also be a really good thing because it shows that you are present in the moment. And so having those butterflies before a live performance is something really special. If you use it the right way, it can really help you too.
Thanks for sharing that. So, I read your bio, and it was really neat to see that you majored in sports medicine at Willamette University, and you did everything theater at the same time. Then later, you went to England, where you pursued a master's degree in screenwriting from Leeds Beckett University. How did you transition? Well, I know you've always been in theater, but how did you transition from sports medicine to screenwriting?
That's a good question. Sports medicine is something that, I just loved. I really enjoyed. And I had always thought that college was something you do to get a degree that leads to gainful employment. And so I was thinking sports medicine might be a good degree that would open up a lot of possibilities, like an athletic trainer or a team doctor for sports, maybe personal training, or just there's a whole variety of opportunities in that general field. Screenwriting was, I was always passionate about acting, but then I started to think before I moved to Los Angeles to pursue work as an actor, I thought maybe there won't be any roles for me because for acting for film and television, typically, I would get sent out on auditions for deaf roles. Theater is much more flexible because when you have a play, it's generally about how a director interprets that text for stage. But in terms of film and television, there are already set expectations. especially if a role is written for a deaf character. So I felt like going into film and television might be more limiting than theater. And that's when it occurred to me, if I were able to write some roles, that might open up some opportunities. So then I thought I should get more training and develop my skills, which would ultimately lead to me finding jobs in the future. So I went to England to learn how to do screenwriting.
I think it's wonderful that you and other writers are developing stories to make sure that the opportunities are there for all marginalized people to participate.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
How important is it to create original works from your experience? And why should we push for more authentic narratives to represent our communities?
Well, like you just said, authentic experiences, authentic stories are valuable. And in order to be authentic, I think it's very important for us, all of us, whether we're deaf or hard of hearing or anyone who's in the sign language community, that we express our own experiences. And it's also very important that our stories are out there for the next generation and future generations, for them to be able to see their own stories reflected on stage and screen. I think that's so important. That will influence how they find themselves inspired for their work and life choices. It really affects so many things.
Do you have any thoughts about what barriers deaf writers may be experiencing right now that are keeping them from succeeding further?
Well, once a person has finished school and graduated and wants to learn, the options are very limited. There were so many opportunities in Los Angeles that I took advantage of, and I would contact them and ask if they'd be willing to provide interpreters, and they were always willing. But then when I would show up to those experiences, there were never any other deaf people there, which I felt like was a loss for our community. And I felt like there should be better outreach and marketing toward deaf people to let them know when learning experiences are accessible. One thing that's interesting now, during the pandemic, people have been staying home, and so many classes that used to be on site have moved to remote venues. And so I don't live in Los Angeles now, but I can still take classes in Los Angeles because they're on Zoom. So I have really taken advantage of those opportunities. And I think that really there's more opportunities for access than there used to be, which is great.
Where did you find your training in the performing arts as an adult?
In college, I studied theater, and that was great, but it was really after college I went to ACT, the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, which was phenomenal. Just amazing experience. It's a 9-week program, and we would study Monday through Friday from 9 in the morning until about 6 in the evening, and that 9 weeks encompassed 14 different classes. We did clowning, Shakespeare, singing, voice training, acting, and really just so many skills. Oh, improvisational theater was one. Lots of different skills. By the end, we did a showcase. So that experience was wonderful. And then I also studied with NTD, the National Theater of the Deaf, for 2 summers. The first one was a regular program, and then the second was more advanced. And so I was able to sample training in both worlds, deaf and hearing, and I felt like I was able to see what hearing theater makers focused on versus what deaf theater makers focused on. And I wish that I could combine both of their approaches. I think that the very best theater training program would have aspects of both. Hearing people need more physicality. They need more facial expressions and movement, and hearing actors need to be told what to do with their hands. In deaf theater, I noticed there was a greater need for translation work into sign language, because most scripts are written in English, not in ASL. So that's a need. And also maybe more training in representing accents or regional differences in sign language. So it would be fantastic to combine both approaches and create a brand new theater program.
You've talked about being involved in YSP and that you've done several types of deaf theater, and that you've also had an opportunity to work at NTD, participating in 2 different formal training programs. Are you currently involved in any tours or
Yes.
any theater productions?
With the National Theater of the Deaf, I was involved with the Legend of Sleepy Hollow production. I was in that with Ryan Schlecht.
Oh, awesome.
That was a lot of fun. I played Katrina Van Tassel, and Ryan played Brom Bones. So we toured with that show, I think, for about 5 weeks. Altogether, the entire experience was maybe 2 months, and it was awesome. We, I think, went to 5 different states. We went to places like New York, Philadelphia, Maryland, and a few other places. So
Yeah, I imagine that was a rich experience, because often on a tour you're working with different professional actors, and at the same time you get to visit different school sites and expose children to theater. I mean, I'm sure that did you work with youth?
Schools, they were actually local theaters.
Oh.
They were local theaters, and we would go into some of these theaters and be really amazed. Like one time I think we were even performing in an opera house or someplace really luxurious. And sometimes we did use the theaters at university campuses as well. It was a wonderful experience, just amazing.
What was it like to work with NTD as an ensemble member?
It was a good experience because it was a small tour. We had only one van for the people and another truck for the set, and that was all. So we just sort of caravanned with our 2 vehicles. Yeah. The whole team put in the hours. We would do the play, and then we would, go to our hotel or go to whatever town we were in to see what restaurants were there and what they had. And we also went to Tarrytown, and that's where Sleepy Hollow, the author of Sleepy Hollow, was from there. That's where the story was based. But it was nice to make that connection.
Who were the NTD teachers back then during your time?
Oh, my teachers included Bernard Bragg and Phyllis Freelick. Gosh, really, there were a lot of different teachers.
For sure, trailblazers.
Yes. Yes.
What a privilege to have been taught by them.
And what I remember about that time was that, those names were so impressive to me, and I felt so honored to be in the same space learning from them. It was a wonderful experience.
So you've mentioned that you worked with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Our Town, and Children of a Lesser God as Sarah.
Yes.
And many more productions. Are there enough opportunities for deaf actors to hone their skills today, and how would they prepare?
So, it used to be, there was a deaf theater company that might provide a workshop or a special training program, but, if your schedule didn't fit with the time the classes were offered, then where was a deaf or hard of hearing person supposed to get training? Where would they go to school for that? It was really difficult. And I believe training is vital because, if you get called to audition for a movie or if you get called out on a theater audition, you really better be able to be professionally prepared to give yourself the best chance at those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I know that NTD is currently in the process of setting up a summer program.
Oh,
It's remote right now just
uh-huh.
because of COVID. So it is planned to be remote. Hopefully, there'll be information about that coming out soon.
Yes, and now there are film productions starting or film summer programs and workshops. So I think that if somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing is interested in acting, but there don't seem to be any training programs available to them, there are other options. Like one good idea might be to take it upon themselves to practice shooting short films, get their friends together and work on projects. I think it's important to just start creating. And later on, they may find a training program that would augment and build on what they already learned on their own because of what they were doing.
You worked on screenplays and teleplays for productions such as Wings, Real Life, Robbed, The Company, and more. What does it look like behind the scenes? And how long does it take to develop a script for film, stage, or television? What's been your experience?
Well, for film, um, a film is 2 hours long, the average movie, so a film script, if you're looking at 2 hours, generally a page equates to 1 minute of screen time. So a script should be maybe 90 to 110 pages. I know 2 hours would make it 120 minutes, but Hollywood these days really prefers movies that are shorter, maybe 90 to 110 minutes. So writing that could take a year, really. It really would depend also on how involved a person was and how much time they had to devote to it. If writing is their full-time job, then that could definitely be a much shorter time, maybe just a couple of months, but the rewrites would still take time, so you might be still looking at 4 or 5 months to get to a finished screenplay. But if you're doing your writing on the side, when you already have a full-time job, then that's difficult and it could take a lot longer. Television is a totally different animal because in television you typically have either 1 hour episodes or you have shows that are half-hour episodes, and they're different formats. So a writer really needs to make a decision which format they align with best, because once you get started on one path, that's pretty much your path for your career. So I am a 1 hour format person, but you have to create what's called a strong story engine. You have to come up with a concept that will be fruitful for the next several years or maybe 100 episodes of television. And so the scripts themselves can be 50 to 60 pages. And you also have to have some concept of the series already created, which could take a few months or a year. Once you've got that story engine set, then the process smooths out a little bit and it might take a month or so. I know writers that are staff writers on television shows that may write for a new script every week or two. And from the idea in their head, it might take a total of 1 month to get on a page. It's a very fast turnaround for television.
And how many shows do they produce in a year? Is it 23?
For broadcast 22, yeah, that's been really condensed. I think, television now is changing, and it's become more like novels come to life. If you look at Netflix, each episode is sort of like a chapter of a novel, and the story has to flow throughout the entire season. And that's different than the way television used to be, where you could tune in the middle of a series to an episode. But for Netflix, that sort of writing is just like one big book.
And how about for stage, in your experience?
In terms of stage, my focus has been on 10-minute plays. So those can be written much more quickly. It might take a week or 2 weeks to write one, or maybe a month if I'm feeling contemplative. Full-length plays, I haven't written one, so I don't know from experience, but I have heard from other people that playwriting can be a very long process, because you write the play and then you take it and workshop it with actors and do a stage reading and then do your revision and then workshop the revision, and the whole process could be years to get it polished and ready for a full-length production.
Yeah, and it's like you said before, they're different beasts, television, film, and stage. Do you, and I'm not sure if you've had an opportunity to experience this yet, but is there a difference in the acting caliber required for each of those three, stage, film, and TV? Do you feel the difference?
I have acted in all three media. They're definitely different. Acting for the stage takes place in front of an audience. And when you're doing a live performance, then you get it started, and if mistakes happen, the show still has to go on. But you also feel the energy. There's an energy exchange with the audience. So if they are having a good time, as an actor, you can feel that. Whereas with film and television, there is no live audience. So you don't get that indescribable something that happens with the audience and influences a performance based on their response. You just go and do the performance you had prepared. But if there are mistakes, you can always stop and do it again.
Kalen is available to work as a consultant, helping writers work through their story development process. Check out her website, which we'll show later, for information on how to connect with her.
Yes, definitely.
Right now, COVID-19 is impacting everyone everywhere, especially the arts. Many companies and businesses are struggling right now. How can we, as a community, support the arts and artists like you?
I'm noticing a shift where, as in the beginning, people weren't sure what to do and everything felt like it was on pause. But then they realized that we couldn't put our lives on hold. We had to be productive and we had to keep moving. And so people started doing a lot of work remotely on Zoom to keep in touch with one another. One really cool project is Deaf Broadway, where folks are coming together and doing signed stage readings of Broadway shows. I think that is a brilliant use of this time to find new ways to create and to collaborate. So I think what sustains us as artists is innovation and finding different ways to create art, rather than feeling like we're in this sort of externally imposed hiatus. We can start writing, start filming. We can begin interacting on virtual platforms and create interactive projects together.
Yes, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to develop new skills and to add new things to your resume, because you really never know what will lead to the next job opportunity.
And you know, the irony of this is that even though each one of us is separate and quarantined at home, we became united through working together online. And it's really been amazing. I think we're looking at the birth of a new model.
What's your next project?
My next project, well, right now I'm working on a new screenwriting project that I'm very excited about, and I'm ready to immerse myself in that research, so I'm grateful to have the time to focus on a new writing project. I'm also taking some online classes for writing, because I always want to learn more about my craft and improve my abilities.
Do you have a website where people can follow you?
I do. It is www.kalenfeeney.com.
Perfect. Follow Kalen there and support her work.
Yes.
So now that we've reached the end of the interview, is there anything else you'd like to add?
You know, one thing I'd like to say to people watching, to the writers out there and to the people who are interested in writing but maybe feeling a little timid about it, I'd like to say that we all have stories to tell, so tell your story in whatever mode you choose. If you have any inkling at all, just do it. There's never a better time to get started than right now.
Thank you. Such wonderful advice. So now that we're at the end of the interview, we typically end these interviews with a round of lightning questions. What's your favorite sign?
Far out.
How about your least favorite?
That's a tough one.
That's all right. We can skip it.
I would have to think about that.
That's fine. What is your def bing?
We are known to choose restaurants based entirely on the state of their lighting so that we can see one another talk. And if the lighting's not good, we have to call the server over to bring all the candles they have so we can see each other.
Absolutely perfect. What talent would you like to have?
I would love to be able to whip up a gourmet meal. That is the skill I would like.
What word or emotion would you like people to remember you by?
I have a sense of humor, but it takes a while to get there. So that's why I say I'd like to be remembered for my sense of humor, but it's not something people recognize right away. You've got to get to know me, and it comes out later. So that's why.
Well, I hope people get to know you and see your humor come through in theater, film, and television.
I hope so.
Well, hand waves, and thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.